All right, guys, my name is Carlos D. Reinoso. I am the co-organizer for this group, Multifamily Investor Nation. We are in Atlanta, Georgia. The leader of this group is Dan Hanford. You guys might be familiar with Multifamily Investor Nation. And also, he's with PassiveInvesting.com. It's with his cooperation and Multifamily Investor Nation that we started this group. This group has been around for, I believe, a couple years now. I joined the group possibly almost a year ago now. A lot of great investors. Just a little brief note about me. I started real estate back in 1999 as a single family agent. Did that for many years. Back in 2007 when the crash occurred, I saw that it was coming and prepared wisely. Did a quick search of any markets that were going to be booming in the near future, and I learned that Atlanta was going to be a great market for in-migration, so we moved over to Georgia in 2007. I've been doing real estate in Georgia ever since, and the past 2 years or so I decided that I wanted to try my hand at multifamily investing, and recently I was invited to be a general partner in a deal, in several deals with two experienced real estate groups here in Georgia and in Florida. And so right now I am a general partner, part of, like I said, two investment groups that are situated both here and in Florida. I joined the group 2 years ago, and about the beginning of about this time last year, I was asked to lead the group, if you will. So I took it upon, I took that opportunity, and when the pandemic hit, as everyone knows, the market slowed down. And since we couldn't meet in person, I kept thinking, well, I want to keep the group alive. And luckily we were able to start this virtual meetup, and that brings us to where we are today. Today I have a great guest, being our first virtual meetup. I'm super ecstatic to bring to you today someone who's had over 20 years experience in this industry, in the finance field. He's worked with self-storage, retail, asset management, and so just a brief history of Callen. He started, like I mentioned, over 20 years ago. He's been asset management for the last 10 years or so. First he started with CWS Capital Partners in 2015. He later went on to be a vice president at Harbor Group for multifamily asset management, and he's currently the senior director for multifamily finance with Old Capital Finance. And we're very excited to welcome Callen. Welcome to the show. And if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing today in the multifamily space.
Sure. Well, thanks, Carlos. Thanks for that nice introduction. I would, one correction, I've been doing asset management for 5 years, actually.
Okay.
But before that, I was with GE Capital for a number of years, about 9 years. And before that, I was in the banking sector for about 8 or 9 years. So a lot of my experience preceding asset management was in the finance field for multifamily, office, industrial, retail, but primarily focused on multifamily. So it was construction loans, mini perm loans with banks. It was joint venture equity with GE, where we'd go out and raise equity, or not raise it, we would be the equity for locally owned operating groups who were vertically integrated. They had the property management team in place. And so we were just equity. That was kind of a fun period of time. That was pre-08. And then 08 happened, and that I became an asset manager pretty quickly. That was decided for me, and I'm kind of glad that happened. I was still getting paid, and did asset management for GE for probably 4 years or so, and then moved on to the debt side for GE Capital, where I was underwriting portfolio debt and CMBS debt at GE. GE decided to sell itself and sent everyone packing. And on that day, to send everyone packing, I went to the asset management route, like you mentioned, CWS Capital and Harbor Group for the past 5 years, and I've learned really a tremendous amount. Working alongside property managers and speaking with investors on at least a weekly basis, and monthly, quarterly, just a lot of investor interaction, presenting to our senior executive committee on our portfolio. It's been a great period, but I felt the need to get more transactional, and this opportunity with Old Capital came up, and so here I am. And Carlos, I'm happy to kind of take it from here, unless you want to.
That's perfect. Go ahead and get started with your presentation, and thank you for that warm introduction and letting us know a little bit more about yourself. Thank you.
Sure thing. And so Old Capital, I tell you, the way I heard about Old Capital, I was driving from Orlando to Jacksonville on site visits, and I was I'm not sure where the people on the call are in their journey, but I was kind of an aspiring GP. I wanted to go out and buy something, right? So I was listening to podcasts. I was searching for podcasts to listen to, and came across this group, Old Capital. Never heard of them, and it's really geared towards the investor, the aspiring investor, in the B and C space for multifamily. And so I checked it out, and what would you know? I'm working for them a year later. Kind of odd how that works out, but they have about 60,000 downloads a month, and as you can see here, over 1 million downloads since they started. And so check that out if you're looking for a good podcast. Again, it's kind of geared towards the investor. I think you will get a lot out of it. On the right-hand side, this is a shameless plug. Old Capital Conference, the annual conference, is October 20th, 21st. I know that logo looks eerily similar to a particular candidate that's running for high office this coming November. I would tell you that Old Capital does not endorse any one particular candidate. We just want we want multifamily to stay great. So that's the theme of this year's conference. And the last 2 years, it's been held in Dallas. This year, of course, will be virtual. But we've had Lou Holtz as a keynote, as well as Roger Staubach. Usually see about 600 to 700 people in the same room. Again, this will be virtual, but you'll see hopefully about 600 to 700 people. These are GPs, LPs, brokers, lenders, and there'll be probably about 7 hours worth of networking from what I hear. So this would be something you should probably check out if you're looking to expand the network. oldcapitalconference.com, I would check that out.
That's great.
All right, that's a shameless plug, and I'll kind of get into the asset management piece here. So I put this slide together because if you're like me, again, I'm an aspiring GP, you're probably spending 95 to 99% of your time thinking about getting to that bottom right corner there where you get the keys handed to you, right? So you've spent a lot of time deciding what class you're going to buy, what markets you're going to play in. You're building relationships, you're building your team, going out and finding key principals, investors, lenders, and who knows how many deals you're underwriting just to get taken seriously, and you're going on these tours. And then you're finally awarded a deal. That's the award on the far right. You're finally awarded a deal, and then you're going to contract negotiation. And then you're hopefully calling me, getting the loan app going, third parties, all the due diligence. There's all this stuff that goes along. And along the way, you're raising equity. And if you've heard Gene Trowbridge, you're getting an SEC attorney to go out and draw your PPM together. And along those lines, you are going to spell out what type of fees you're going to have in this investment. So, sponsor's going to get an acquisition fee. You're going to pay a third-party property manager 3% to manage the property. And by the way, there's going to be this 1.5–2% asset management fee. And so as you're going out and raising this equity, hopefully one of you will attract Atlanta's newest billionaire, Tyler Perry here, but to one of your deals. If that's the case, he's going to look at it. He's probably going to say, "Why would I pay you 1.5% when I'm already paying 3% to a property manager to do everything?" Right? So this is the next step. We spent all this time leading up to the close. Now it's like, what do we do after the close? What comes next? And you're going to switch hats very quickly from capital raiser and deal sourcer, acquisition guy, to the asset manager. And along with that comes a ton of duties, and you kind of see them spelled out here, kind of all tied into that middle circle, asset management. You're really providing vision to the third party property manager. You're approving budgets, putting together business plans. You're approving capital and approving what you're going to do with the capital plan. So not just the capital dollars. You're staying on top of what the market looks like, financial analysis on a monthly basis. There's a number of things that you do that could probably make someone's head spin. So I did this video with James Ng. If you know James Ng from our Dallas office, he has a channel. And so I did this, ran through these slides for the most part, changed them up a little bit. I ran through these slides and I condensed the asset management function here into 4 different categories. Your job as an asset manager is to manage the manager or manage the investment.
Real quick, Clay, if I may.
Yeah.
We're going to have a copy, because someone's asking, we're going to get a copy of the slide or the deck, the pitch deck or anything?
Absolutely. Happy to do that.
Sounds great.
Happy to do it. So, I've condensed all these things that you'll be doing as an asset manager into 4 primary categories: as planning, monitoring, communicating, and transacting. And if you look to the right, we call this the distinction between an asset manager and property manager. I spend a lot of time on site and with the property managers, and I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot, and I can promise you, and maybe some of you have a background in property management, it is a grind. It is, they have their heads down day to day, handling upset residents with maintenance logs. They're trying to keep occupancy up, they're leasing, staffing, compliance, vendors, just a number of things, not to mention all the emergencies that kind of pop up. So your job is to stay at a 30,000 foot view. Again, you are managing the manager. So you're also a steward of your investors' money. So it's incumbent on you not to get into the details, to the nitty-gritty details, unless it's truly warranted from a serious situation on site. But this is just the distinction. You can tell from the left-hand side, high level, the right-hand side, you're in the weeds. So as I go through, I'll walk through all these 4 categories. You'll start to see a little bit of an operating rhythm develop. In the final slide, I'll show you kind of what that looks like, but we're going to start with planning here. And really what I have in the plans, we'll work our way left to right. The business plan is, it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's meant to be a very high level roadmap, a 1-page type description of the asset, of the market, the top priorities you want to see happen over the coming year, the capital needs the property has, and then I have a summary of debt in there. And that's really for your standpoint. I'm going to show you, I'll be happy to send this to you. I'm going to go ahead and flip here. Can you see that? It's a very small font. We're not going to read through it, but I want to show you, this is just an example of a business plan that I drew up. Happy to send this to you if you want to send me an email. That email address, callen@oldcapitallending.com, name, phone number, and just out of curiosity, I'd love to see what your goal is with multifamily, where you are in your journey, maybe just really quick. Just let me know what you're wanting to aspire to or what you're doing right now.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, we're definitely doing multifamily deals. Like I mentioned, we have a couple of groups that are helping us take down some deals. And as far as the rest of the gentlemen here in the group, I happen to know, their backstory to some of them here. I think we're all basically, trying to get either our first or our next few deals taken down. Okay,
great. Well, you might find value in this. You may not. It's up to you. If you want it, just shoot me an email. Happy to send it along. Just walking through it real quick. The asset description is really stating what you already know. And let me take a step back. You're going to send this business plan to your property management company before the budgets are drawn up every year. That's the idea. The idea is to set the tone with the people who are drawing up those budgets, to let them know what you expect in the way of a finished product of a budget. So they're gonna, that's why it needs to be quick, succinct, one page, we don't want to burden them with a novel. Just kind of stick to the facts here. So we're going to start at the top, asset description, just kind of go through exactly what we already know about the property, the floor plans, kind of where it sits in the market maybe. And you see that last sentence there, if there's any major thing that's going on this year, in this case I'm saying our plan is to add a 2,000 square foot fitness center in the second half of 2021. So brief and to the point. Then go into the market dynamics. Unless you have access to CoStar, I wouldn't worry about putting specific rent growth projections and occupancy projections. It's fantastic if you have that data, throw it in there. Sometimes you just go off of gut, right? Last year, in this case, I'm putting here, we saw 3.25% market rent growth. This year, I want to push our teams to do 3.75%. And we have a Publix anchored shopping center that's going to be coming in. That's going to add value, to the general area. We got a forthcoming upgrade program that we think will add value. So I put that as a reason to justify pushing on rent growth above and beyond what we did last year. Now, if you know that there's going to be a property that's going to be delivering next door to you and offering 2 months concessions during the entire year, throw that in there as well, so they know how to budget concessions for the coming year. Again, you're just setting the tone for what you expect to see in the budget. Top priorities, I'd call this the meat of the business plan. This is where you want to kind of keep it to 3 to 5 main things you want to achieve throughout the year. You'll see in this, I've said I want to see 3.75% effective rent growth, exclusive of the benefit from any renovation premiums. I want to see occupancy maintained on average of 95%. And then I get into the renovation strategy. And this is where I get a little bit specific. If you're doing renovations in your deals, you kind of want to lay out how many you expect to do and when the initial ones will get delivered, how many you're going to do on a monthly basis. And then make sure they're aware that there are caps on how much you spend on each renovation for each bedroom or each floor plan. And there has to be a minimum premium that you have to achieve on those. I've had deals in the past where we get into it and we're spending a heck of a lot more money than we thought we were, and we're not really getting the traction we thought. And it just, by the time you get through about 50 of them, you look up and you're like, wow, we didn't really do what we thought we might do. So I'll just lay this out very quickly and early, and make sure you're tracking that as you go throughout the year. I won't go through these others, but this is just an area where if you want to implement washer dryers, reserve parking program, and here a fitness center by a certain date, just throw it in here. That's the top priorities. Capital program, pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I'd point out here is keep it high level. Keep it, say greater than $25,000 or high value type addition. If you're going to do a grilling station for $15,000, throw it in there because it's a high impact deal. Dog park.
So Clay, I have a question. So, if I may.
Sure.
So when they do, when they are getting ready and they're letting you know how many units they're going to be renovating, do you need to know the full scope? So I know people do let's say they only do 40% of the units. And then later on, they either do the other 60% or they leave it as meat on the bone for the next deal. In your experience, do you see where people, do they have to let you know up front, listen, we're only going to do 40% right now, and we may do the other 60 later? Is that something that you request up front as far as the loan is concerned?
Oh, as far as the loan, yeah. Well, the loan
or the asset management.
Okay, yeah. So for the asset manager, for your job again, you are the owner's representative. So you're the owner. You put your owner cap on, and so you've underwritten the deal. And you're only going to do, say, 40% of the units and leave the 60% for the next guy. The property manager doesn't have to know that. I mean, there's no reason not to tell them that. But the property manager just needs to know how many that year needs to get done. In your underwriting, you're going to assume that you're going to complete X number of units in years 1, 2, and 3. And so your budget needs to reflect that. They don't necessarily need to know it's going to be over a 3-year period. They just need to know for the coming 12-month period how many have to be done.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So going back to the capital program, the only thing I'd also make sure you include is the lender required repairs, because they are lender required, and there's going to be a date associated with that. And more recently, we've had about $300,000 worth of loan draws, replacement reserves, and whatnot held up because we could not get in to complete our lender required repairs, like radon testing, because of COVID. So if you can't get those done, and you don't get them done in time, the lender might hold back funds that you need to keep your property running. Just be mindful of that. So it's important to put it on a business plan to keep your mind on it, but also make sure it makes the budget. There's $25,000 in wood rot that needs to get done, the lender says, by April, then your property manager needs to load that into the capital schedule for April for the money to go out. Last thing, bottom is loan summary. And again, this is for you, not for the property manager so much. And you're just going to recite kind of the high-level loan terms, the reserves and escrows. They're in the middle. And then to the right, that's the most important thing. You want to be wary or mindful of any covenants that you have to maintain. You won't see this as much in agency debt, but if you're getting a loan from a bank or a bridge lender, you might have a debt service coverage covenant that you have to maintain. And this is going to be tested on a routine basis. It might be quarterly, it might be semi-annual. And more importantly, and this recently got me too, I won't go into all the details, but the NOI in the debt service will be defined in the loan agreement. It's not simply your NOI divided by your debt service, right? So you might look at your loan agreement when you close, or when you're negotiating the loan agreement, the deal with the lender. It's gonna state, we're gonna calculate NOI as, your traditional NOI less any replacement reserves, or it might be based off of T3 income and T12 expenses. Your debt service might be the greater of the T12 debt service, or an amortizing amount that's more aggressive than what you actually have in place. So I just put that out there because, again, it jumped up and bit me hard on a really nice deal that was covering your debt about 1.8 times down in Orlando. Little things like that. It's just you gotta make sure that's front and center, and a good place to make it front and center is the business plan. So, perfect. Again, shoot me an email if you want a copy of that. I'm more than happy to send it to you. All right, that was a lot of time on the business plan. I won't spend as much time on these other items, but the budget, again, that's something the property manager is going to put together. That's definitely more granular. They're going to get into the sub accounts, all the nitty gritty. Whereas all of us here on this call, we probably look at the major line items, right? R&M, contract services, all that. They're going to be looking at all those small items in between, and they're going to forecast the next 12 months. And your job is to approve the budget, but you want to make sure they're being properly aggressive. I put realistic question mark, reasonable question mark. The reason I do that, realistic means, are they, I think that in some cases you'll have some property managers who want to just get the process over with, right? It's September, October, they're putting together a budget. They know if they throw in some overly ambitious rent growth, or they're going to say, I'm going to cut our turn costs by, $50 for, they're just going to throw out some numbers. Is it realistic? They might just be wanting to move on to the next thing and shoot it off to me to approve and, let it, call it a day. Part of your job is to make sure it is realistic. On the flip side, it's reasonable. I mean, is it reasonable? You have property managers who might want to sandbag so that they make their bonus potential. So they might be a little bit too lenient on rent growth. They might be overly cautious on, say, concessions. So you just have to take the measuring rod to each budget and make sure that it's properly aggressive. You want to have something that's realistic, but that's something that can be achieved, but something that's going to challenge them to push. So that's the one thing I point out there. Reforecast, this is something, I'd be surprised if many people are doing this. This is something that the two groups that I was part of did. It's something that we made sure to do. I would highly encourage it. And I have this first bullet here, cash is priority number one. It is the lifeblood of your investment. Without it, You can't pay your vendors, you can't pay your lender, certainly can't pay your investors without cash. I saw something on LinkedIn, someone said the lifeblood of your property is traffic, and I totally disagree. I like the sentiment, but that's just not the case. It's your cash. So you want to make sure you have enough of it. Let's say you're in March, and you get a letter from the lender saying, we just did a forecast of your taxes, and we realized that your tax escrows are a little short from where we think taxes are going to come in September. So we need you to start escrowing $10,000 more per month. Well, that might cause a problem when it comes to paying your distribution in September or October. So you want to kind of be able to see that in advance, get ahead of it. That's, of course, one small example. You might run into a situation where you had I've certainly had this happen, a large capital event. You've had to use operating cash to cover some of that because you're out of capital reserves. How does that look down the road? You might be able to cover the second quarter, but what about the third and fourth quarter? So the reforecast is easier said than done. I think what I would point you to, though, is when you hire your third-party property manager to manage your property, ask them for a template. They should have one. If not, you can quickly develop one on Excel. You just want to make sure it lines up with the categories or how the financial statements are prepared for your in your existing deal with existing property manager, line item for line item. That makes it a lot easier. If I had a template, I'd send it along to you, but I would encourage you to reach out to your third party. Any questions on planning? All right.
So far, so good.
All right, I'm going to move on to monitoring. So monitoring, I feel like I goofed here a little bit on the far left. Instead of traffic, that is a very important measure. I probably should have put KPIs, or key performance indicators. Monitor your key performance indicators, and here traffic I think is probably one of the most important. And a couple of others I would put in there would be occupancy, your trended occupancy, say 60 days out. And then also your renewal percentage for the given month. And finally, maybe even your maintenance tickets. Are they piling up? So those are items that I looked at on a weekly basis in my prior life, but traffic is the one that I kind of focused on the most. So here I have, again, you want to look at this on a weekly routine, and you want to determine what's driving the traffic in. Do you have great curb appeal with great signage? So is it people just walking in? Is it internet traffic? Is it a particular service that you're using, Zillow? Your property manager should be able to tell you what's generating that traffic. And then you want to see how many people are coming in the door. That's measured in the number of tours that you're getting. And then out of those tours, how many apps are being signed? And out of the apps, how many net leases are you signing? So the difference there is, someone might sign an app, but they might not be qualified. They might get turned down, or they might just cancel. And you kind of want to keep an eye on that to see if there's a theme there. But usually there's not, but long story short, you want to look at that net leases, and you want to see, the measure will be different from shop to shop, but what I've always held to is 25 to 30% conversion of those tours that come through. Anything less and continually less, you might want to start asking your property manager, what's going on? Do we have an issue with our presentation or product or our people? Mm-hmm. So again, that's something for your property manager to find out, but it's for something for you to be on top of. P&L results, it sounds exactly what it is. I mean, you're going to be getting these monthly, and you want to really find signs of early trends, negative trends in particular. Reason why is that the year goes by super fast insofar as you'll get into March, and then say March is complete. You're not going to get the March financials till mid-April. By that time, you will have realized that you are going way over budget on a certain line item, and it might be May or June before you can start to take action. You're halfway into the year, so you might be fully baked on an issue, a problem that you have. So I start looking in February, asking questions. Why are we so over budget on our unit turns? Are we are spending a lot more money on locators than what we kind of set out to do? Do we really need to do that? Or if we do, where can we cut back in other areas? So catching that stuff early is important. And so that's what I'd say about that. The balance sheet here, I would keep an eye on this. I know balance sheets are boring, and a lot of people probably don't pay attention to them, but the cash section it tells a lot that you really need to know. Of course, the operating cash, you're definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. Capital reserves, you want to make sure you still have money for rainy day, for surprises. If you don't have that, you just have to be mindful that you have a healthy operating cash available to meet any kind of surprises. We talked about taxes and insurance reserves in the business plan discussion. The last thing here, accounts receivable and accounts payable. Keep an eye on that. Your receivables, if you see an increase there, that means your collections are not coming in like you thought. That might be a KPI, especially during COVID, you want to pay more attention to. I know everyone, it really is. And then the AP, your payables. If you see that grow, that means your vendors aren't getting paid. The vendors aren't going to pay. They're not going to call you as an asset manager. They're going to call the property manager and the regional manager, and they're going to bark at them. But they're not going to call you, and so you won't know that's an issue until you hear one day that your landscaper walked off the job. So keep an eye out on your payables. Just make sure they're not growing to a degree where it's unsustainable. Generally you want to stay 30 to 45 days current on those. Finally, on monitoring site visits. Site visits, in my opinion, is really the fun stuff. I love getting out, seeing the property. I'm an extrovert, love talking to people. The four things I would really pay attention to, I highly encourage you to pay attention to, are the drive-up presentation, leasing center and amenities, the tour route, and the readiness of your vacant units. So going through those, and again, the idea of this really is your first impression for prospects, right? You're going to have, this is true for all of us. If we were to drive into a property and let's say it's kind of getting towards the evening, the light's out on the sign, you don't see the sign, maybe the sign needs to be pressure washed, or there's no flower color around the signs. It's just kind of a blah type entrance. You're going to have a blah type of tour. That's how you started off the tour. So you want that drive-up presentation looking what we used to call pristine in one of my companies. Everything needs to look pristine. Leasing center and amenities, similar story. Your prospects are going to be parked there while they wait to speak with someone. You want it smelling good. You don't want the music overly loud unless you're in some kind of high energy midtown environment maybe. But you want it very inviting, where you can have a good conversation. And then on the tour route, you're going to take them to the amenities. You're going to walk them through the community. And as you walk along, you don't want leaves showing up in your pool. I've had you might have had heavy rain the day before. This has happened to me a number of times. Heavy rain the night before. The chemicals in the pool get off balance and the pool's green, right? Nobody wants to see a green pool, especially prospect. That can happen overnight. So you want to make sure your property team is on top of that and addressing it immediately. And then, another thing on tour route, look for things. Does the sidewalk need to be pressure washed? The vinyl or the siding need to be pressure washed? Does it look clean? I don't care if the back side of the building looks bad, but the tour route needs to look really nice, right? So keep that in mind. And then the vacant unit readiness, as you take deals down, maybe you already have some deals. One thing that I've done is get on site, and I don't have all day to walk all the properties or all the units. If you do, absolutely do that. But if you don't, take your phone out, go online, look at one of the units that's available, assuming that it's being marketed on apartments.com or your website. Just choose a random unit and ask your property manager or leasing agent to take you to that unit. Look to see if there's dust on the countertops. Look to see if there's vacuum marks in the carpet. Does it look clean? Is paint splotched? And I've seen this so many times where our painter would come in and they'd paint over this nice new door hardware. Drive me crazy. Happened all the time. That kind of stuff you want your team to catch and call your vendors out on. When you have a prospect walking in, that needs to be their home, and they need to feel like it's their home. So keep that in mind. As far as routine and how you carry it out, I have on here at least quarterly. I was I had deals in Raleigh, Charlotte, Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, a number of different markets, right? And so I couldn't spend a week in those markets. I had a couple of days. So I would go probably quarterly. And as you know, I would also encourage you to do two things. One, pop-up visits, show up unannounced, not as a gotcha tactic, but you just want to see what the property looks like on a daily basis. And you also want to keep your team on their toes. But do some planned visits as well. You don't want to create an environment where you're, Mr. Owner coming in and no one can trust you. You want them to talk to you freely and all that. So don't be top down, be relational, be kind, but pop in and remind them that you are the owner and you have standards. One tool I would point to, if you don't already know it, look it up here. It's an app called Site Audit Pro. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
So if you haven't, go check it out on App Store or wherever you get your apps, Google Play or whatever it's called. Site Audit Pro is just an app where you can go take pictures and take notes on issues you see as you walk through a property. And that's something that's been very handy. You can email that out to your property manager, to the regional manager, and say, these are some issues I want addressed. So last thing I'd say on this issue, comp shops. Definitely spend time with your comps. I've done this in, I think, every single market that I've asset managed in, from Chicago down to Miami. That's very important to do, especially if you have issues that you're battling at a property. Here in Midtown, had a really bad issue at a really nice property with fraudulent applications. I'm not sure if y'all are terribly familiar with fraudulent applications, but that's a big issue in Atlanta. I think in the larger markets, Dallas deals with it. A lot of markets deal with it. People saying they are who they're not for various reasons, and so it causes all kinds of problems, and a lot of write-offs and whatnot. I spent the better part of a day visiting our comps in the immediate area, from across the street to maybe 2 miles down the road. Plopped in, and I said, "I'm Clay Allen. I'm with so-and-so group. We own XYZ property down the street, and we're having this issue with frauds. I'd love to understand how you guys are dealing with it." And they will be like this, a faucet of water coming out, tell you everything they're dealing with, how they're dealing with it. I learned so much about that issue on that one day. And now I personally didn't solve it, but we made it a number one issue to deal with. Brought in a new management team, new regional manager. We enacted some software around that, and it really, really paid off. Whereas our comps were still struggling with it, we reduced our bad debt down significantly, and our occupancy was staying high. People were paying better than what we thought. It was a great outcome. So definitely shop your comps, be open and honest. They'll be that way with you back. All right, I'm going to move around. We're getting there. Communicate. So communication, obviously, is key. We just talked about monitoring. We're communicating with our property manager, so that kind of falls in that bucket under monitoring. I'm speaking here really about with your investors and your lenders. Specifically with your investors, the style. If you're syndicating and you're taking down a big property, you might have 20 to 40 people in a deal, right? A lot of different people. They might have day jobs, might be in the middle of a surgery or drawing up some loan docs or doing some attorney work. They're high income professionals. They're not real estate guys. Maybe they're not multifamily guys. So I would be brief and concise. Don't waste too much of their time. Speak thematically. That's a problem that I've had in the past, and I probably still deal with a little bit, but speak thematically. So avoid precise metrics that they don't understand, the language that they don't use. And just say, if you're seeing solid rent growth, say it. You don't have to tell them it's 3.23 last month. They don't really care about that. So increase traffic. We're having a little bit of an issue over here. And if they want more information, by all means, you're gonna get on the phone with them and tell them what they need to hear, what they need to know. To that end, I'd say know your audience. Again, I did this video running through these slides with James Ing. long story short, you want to know the audience. I know James Ing, he's invested in 25, 26 properties. He's an LP to that end. He's going to want to know details, right? That's his business. So for someone like that, by all means, go into the details, all the nitty gritty. But I'd say, for the people who are just your syndicate, who are just high level, high income earners, tell them what they need to know, and keep it at that. As far as routine and frequency, I would say at the very least quarterly, monthly is better for communication. I would make that monthly along with the financial results. Just a high level recap. Again, don't waste their time with 3 pages of notes. And then consider a semi-annual webinar where they get to see your face, maybe do a video on site and show them one of the large capital projects that just got completed, or the progress along the lines of what you're doing. Maybe you're rebuilding a damaged building to fire units, like 20 units down. Show them some pictures, So keep that in mind. Definitely be available for any questions ad hoc for all your investors, and respond within 24 hours. That kind of goes without saying. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. One thing on here, the very last bullet, is post-close. I would consider weekly calls. I've certainly done that with a number of investors. The weekly calls is meant to kind of give your investors who may not know and trust you that well quite yet, give them a little bit of hand-holding early on, and let them get comfortable with you. And you're going to update them on, say, traffic for the prior week, where your occupancy stands, how you're coming along on certain capital projects that you're kicking off. They don't have to be any more than 30 minutes, and sometimes they can be as short as 15 minutes. But an opportunity for them to get in touch with the person who has their $50,000 or $100,000 check will go a long way for the next deal. Finally, with the lender, I threw the lender in here, being one myself. You don't forget they're going to provide anywhere from 65% to 80% of the capital stack. That is a big chunk of change, and so make sure they're being treated as such. Now they're going to have a lot of deals in their desk that they manage, and they're in a first position, so in their safe position. But that's again, 80% of the capital stack is a large dollar amount. So I would just be very responsive when they request items, when they request inspections. Get back with them and schedule that inspection, maybe meet them out on site to walk them through. A lot of times they hire a third party to do that, but do it anyway. Go out there and meet the person. I put on here, stay in front of any covenants. We talked about that with the debt service coverage covenant. Again, that stuck up on me, and it caused problems. We got it solved, but it caused problems. And you want to make sure you are in front of any increases in, let's say, a minimum debt service coverage covenant. Be very mindful of that stuff, so that when you come into that issue, you're on a first name basis with your servicer, with your lender. You can pick up the phone and call them. It's like, guys, we have an issue. I'm going to need you to work with me. So keep that relationship up. Finally, monitor those escrow balances. That doesn't need to be restated. I've covered that earlier.
Quick question. Is that something where you want to have one person be the key contact with the lender, or do you want where everyone should be in contact with the lender as far as general partners and property managers and
no, just you
one person, and that would be the investor relations person?
Just you. And let's say your third party property manager has a construction management team and they're handling your draw request. You might put them in direct touch with the draw team for your servicer, but you want to be the relationship guy. You want everything funneled through you. You don't want your property manager getting bad news and you don't know about it. So definitely you.
Great tip.
Finally, transactions. You're going to be transacting while you're here in that position as a GP. I threw distributions as a transaction, and it certainly is. It's the investor's favorite word. And I put here consistency is key on the timing. Timing, what I mean by that is, traditionally quarterly is how often you pay out those distributions. So what I'd say is angle for that if you can. I know that many people are, Dan Hanford's group will go to monthly. They definitely prefer monthly because the technology definitely allows it. That is totally fine. From an asset manager standpoint, consider that you might have an issue pop up, and you say the third week of January that you've got to take care of immediately, cash issue, and that fourth week you're supposed to be sending out your distribution. Well, you might not have the cash, So that's why I like a quarterly. If something were to happen in January, February, I can look back and say, okay, well, I have maybe a couple months to figure it out before I send that quarterly check out. But either way, monthly seems to be the way people are going. I just wanted to point that out. Be mindful of the rate that's being paid out. If you promised an 8%, deliver on 8% if cash allows. If you are producing 10% cash on cash, take that extra 2% and put it into a rainy day fund. Don't try to be a hero and distribute more than what you promised. You're going to need that money one day. So, and by the way, I mean, if you build up this rainy day fund, you go to sell, it's all sitting there ready to be distributed. It's coming in the back end. So it's not like you're holding that from your investors. And on the flip side, if you're just not generating the cash you need, you see a cash event coming or a cash crunch, then cut if you have to. You might find yourself having to cut, just go ahead and do it. And you, of course, give your investors advance notice and craft a very thoughtful reasoning and how you're going to solve that problem. COVID is prime example everyone's going through right now. I know a number of groups are still holding back on their distributions, or they're distributing at a very low rate compared to what they were, because we just don't know where things are going with COVID. So disposition, that's obviously something you'll need to pull the trigger on at some point in your hold. With that, I would say when you had to consider it, you would look at your return hurdle. Are you achieving those return hurdles? Is your supply ahead of demand? Let's say you're sitting in Midtown and you're getting these reports. You're looking at every day you check the Atlanta Business Chronicle, you're seeing that another deal is being planned, another deal is being planned, another deal is being planned, and you can't get out of the cycle. You've been providing 2 to 3 months of concessions for the last 2 years. You don't want to continue doing that. You might cut your losses. So just keep an eye on the market. The neighborhood might be shifting towards a negative. Might be a reason to go ahead and put it on the market. Or you may have just completed what you wanted to do with the renovations, like we talked about earlier, leaving meat on the bone. It's time to go ahead and sell and see what we can get for the property. So I would go out to three brokers in the market. Traditionally, you generally go with the broker that you bought the deal from. But in this case, I would definitely, in every case, I would get 3 BOVs. And then after those BOVs come in, have calls with those different brokers to review the assumptions that they were using.
Hey, what is a BOV?
I'm sorry, a broker's opinion of value. That's an indication of what they feel they can sell it for.
Which a lot of times there's a lot of fluff, right?
A lot of fluff.
Yeah. A lot of fluff.
And that's exactly, and that's the reason it's important to have those calls with the brokers, just to review that, to kind of challenge them on the assumptions being used, and then also to ask them about how you're going to market it and when you plan on taking the deal out. Is there any strategy around that? So in Texas, they might not want to put a deal or walk people around in the August heat. They might pay to wait a couple months. So just things like that. Okay. Then refinance. I have here. Have you done your job as you've promised? You're going to do renovations. You're going to force appreciation. Maybe you've done that, and you still want to hold on this property a little bit longer. You've created value. You've looked around the market. The prevailing interest rates are low, as they are right now. Terms are good. Prepayments not terrible. So you want to take advantage of that. Go ahead and pull the trigger on a refi. Hopefully you're going to call me and help me size it for you, and then move on from there. So just keeping your eye on the investment. Again, your property managers aren't going to be doing that for you. That's your job. So,
right.
So that's that. I think the last thing I had here is more around the rhythm. Again, weekly reviewing those KPIs, the traffic, occupancy, and trend. monthly. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting another internet connection's unstable. I just want to make sure. Monthly basis, you are having those monthly calls after the financial reviews with your property manager and your regional manager, maybe even your maintenance supervisor on the call to quiz them on R&M and capital items and whatnot. Reviewing those monthly operating metrics, and I put on here reasons for move-outs. That's something you should be asking your property manager. What's the most common reason? In most cases, more recently, it's been home purchases, job relocations. But you need to know if there's some that pop up that's called unhappy with management, or things like that. You kind of want to know if there's a problem. Quarterly basis, we talked about distributions. That might be monthly. Investor communication really should be monthly, but at the very least quarterly. Site visits and comp shops, same. More often you can do it, the better, but quarterly at least. And then I'd challenge everyone to reforecast their cash, at least on a quarterly basis. And of course, annually business plans and your budgets that you're going to approve. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's it for the asset management piece. Any questions on?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
When acquiring an asset with the Fannie and Freddie reserves, with a 9 to 12 months reserves, so in that ballpark. So what happens if they shorten that time period, but you already locked into your 9 or 12 month hold? Will you now qualify for that shorter time?
If you haven't closed yet, I would imagine that would be reduced. Are you saying so? Yeah. So right now, let's say you go to.
So if you close on the property, let's say June, and they're going to hold for 9 months, right?
Got it. Okay. Well, in that case, it's always have to revert back to the loan documents, is my guess. You have to revert back to that, but you certainly can pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey guys, can we do a modification?" Or you don't want to modify the loan documents; it's really expensive. But can you give me some love here a little bit and see if we can work this out? Right. They might be willing. I'm not sure. I haven't run into that, of course, but it's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So great transition. I only have like 3 or 4 slides on the debt side. I'll just run through the debt real quick. I'm onboarding here about 4 or 5 weeks on with Old Capital, so I'm still getting up to speed here, but learning a lot in the process. Freddie Mac put out a second quarter update a few weeks ago, and in it, they, on the far left side, they made the point that they expect 20 to 40% less volume in multifamily lending across the board. That's not Freddie or Fannie. That's Freddie, Fannie, and CMBS, Bridge, Life Cos, and banks, right? So stands to reason you're not going to see as many transactions. You're not going to see as many loans being generated. On the flip side of that, you look to the far right, and those 2 green rectangles are supposed to be an equal sign. That's a horrible graphic. All right, this was the slide I was referring to. 20% to 40% lower volume on multifamily lending across the board. To the right here is an equal sign, these 2 rectangles. And that's to say Fannie and Freddie are set to match the pace of volume they did in 2019. Kind of counterintuitive a little bit. Second quarter was almost like a lost quarter to transactions because of COVID, but we saw a ton of refinance activity that's making up for that. It stands to reason because you have rates where they are right now, and people are just kind of locking in at this point. Are seeing deals, new deals getting done. That's starting to thaw a lot, so that's good to see. But the point being is, Fannie and Freddie, they were mandated, formed to provide liquidity and stability to the market. So that's exactly what they're doing right now. So they're doing their job. So that gives you a flavor for kind of what's going on at a high level in the lending markets. I'm having a hard time getting any banks on the phone, by the way. They're dealing with their hotel loans, their retail loans. They have plenty on their plates. That's not to say they won't do business, but it's just really tough getting them on the phone right now. I am seeing some bridge lenders pop up. They are more conservative than they were before. And rates are, and I'm going to go ahead and flip here, but flip here. Rates for bridge, I'm seeing anywhere from as low as 5 to up to 12, like payday loans, so, and 2% fees. This here is probably the world's busiest PowerPoint slide, and I didn't put this on here to go through it detailed, so don't worry, I'm not going to do that. I put this on here. Let me explain it first. This is just Fannie and Freddie conventional on your left, so that's the larger loan amounts, and small balance on the right. This is me and my own handiwork trying to get up to speed on which products offer what. And the reason I threw it in here is I just wanted to show you how nuanced it can be. It's not that you're going to go to say a DUS lender and say, yeah, I need a Fannie loan. What you got? A lot of things drive pricing, proceeds, maybe the debt service reserve amount. There's a number of things. Your markets that you choose will drive pricing and proceeds. So it's very nuanced. So that's why I put it on here. But what I did in the following two or three slides is go through and kind of show you what I feel like are the benefits of each program. So this is conventional. This is for Fannie, say $6 million and up, and for Freddie, $5 million, $5 to $7.5 million higher. Could be a conventional deal for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So Fannie Mae, the couple of benefits you get with conventional is green financing. That's come back more recently. They've gotten more aggressive with green financing. So if you had a large deal and you got pricing on it, pricing's really good right now. I mean, the rates are really, really strong. You're probably looking at, say, low threes on a general deal for a standard straight up Fannie product. But if you want to spend the money, go out and get a report, and the lender would order this, they can find efficiencies to be created in your water and electric usage, as they call it green up financing. And if you build that into your capital plan and execute on that within a certain number of months, you'll qualify right out of the gate for at least 30 basis points off your rate. And that's on the index cap. Right now, indexes are capped with Fannie at 90 basis points. That drops them automatically to 60 basis points. And then if, depending on what efficiencies you're creating and maybe the loan amount, I'm not sure exactly what drives it, but you can get additional 10 to 15 basis points. So upwards of 45 basis points to come off your rate. Very competitive, something to be mindful of if you have a deal that you want me to quote. We can look into that for you. Renovation dollars as well. That's a key difference between Freddie and Fannie. You can't get reno dollars from the loan at Freddie, but Fannie you can if your underwriting your underwritten cash flow supports a greater than 80% of purchase price. So what I mean by that, let's see if I can try to reduce it here a little bit. If your debt service coverage is say at the 125 max, or I'm sorry, let me take this back. If you're capped out at 80% right now, your loan to value, and your cash flow could support, say, a 121 or 120 DSC, but your cap is 125, then you have the ability to kind of go up over that 80% of purchase price with rehab dollars. They'll finance that up to 75%, and they'll escrow it on their books. You can't hold on to that cash. You have to spend that money in the first 12 months, and the sponsor, you'll have to come out of pocket to pay for those things, but they'll reimburse you from those loan dollars that are held in escrow. The reason I point that out is, some hoops to jump through and qualifications to go through, but your equity is going to be much more expensive than that, say, high 2s, low 3% interest rate, right? So definitely something to consider, something you won't get from Freddie. On the Freddie side, the debt service reserves right now, that's kind of the going thing with COVID. They're coming in at most at 9 months versus 12 months at Fannie, so keep that in mind. And then in a biggie, really, in a little bit more of a volatile interest rate environment, which we're not in right now, but if you were in one, you can rate lock at a lot earlier period than you can with Fannie. I think Fannie's like day before you close is when you lock, rate lock with Freddie 45 to 60 days out. So that's the key differences between conventional. I just want to take a look at small balance. This is the place I would probably play on my first deal. You're looking at loan balances, 7.5 million and below. Fannie, I put question marks there because there's, it's kind of an extension of your conventional product, but not really any big benefits for the small guy. The Freddie deal has been very attractive for, let's say, someone like myself who is non-experienced, meaning I have not owned a property or signed on a loan myself or guaranteed a loan. I put a line through that because I think as recently as last week, they've basically said there's no path forward for non-experienced investors. In other words, you have to have experience on your sponsorship team for a Freddie small balance. I wanted to put that on here so as kind of pointed out that's kind of a new mandate. But here again, rate lock is a lot earlier than you would get with Fannie Mae. And the prepayment, you have a step down option available, whereas you wouldn't get that with Fannie Mae. It's just yield maintenance on Fannie Mae. So that's attractive. I still think the Freddie product is definitely more attractive for the smaller balance deal, but it's not quite as attractive as it was maybe 3 months ago.
When you're stepping down on the prepayment penalties, does it eventually go away? Like after, let's say, 20 years, there's no more penalty, or is there always going to be some kind of penalty on that loan?
So, generally speaking, for say a fixed rate product, you're going to see, let's say a 5-year deal will be a 5-4-3-2-1. You're generally going to land at 1% towards the end of your year, or your term, I should say. You have some of these longer term deals, say a 10-year deal, then it's going to kind of multiply it, right? 10, 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, 7, 7, do the math, and you're still going to end up at 1%. And so I've seen, like, I have a brother-in-law who has some multifamily units. He does some bank financing, local bank financing. He can get out right now without a prepayment fee. You don't see that much on the agency side. You have some hybrid options with, say, Freddie Mac, a hybrid deal where you can go a 20-year term, where the first, let's say, let me see how I can explain this. Let's say you want to do 10 years fixed and 10 years floating. The first half is going to be fixed and the second half is going to be floating. You can have a 20-year term where the first 5 years are fixed and the last 15 are floating. So once you convert to that floating, you are at that 1%. But before that, it will be the step down provision. But generally speaking, yeah, you will owe some money on the back end. The only difference would be, let's say under a yield maintenance scenario, the last 90 days before the maturity, that's open, that's free. But of course, you've already run the gamut on that. So if you do a refi, are you still required to pay the prepayment penalty? You are. A lot of people ask that question, and unfortunately so. Now, if you're refining with the same lender, there might be some relief on that, but generally speaking, yeah, you got to remember these loans are sold off into the secondary market, and so there's some yield that has to continue to be paid to those bondholders, if you will, the people who are holding the paper of those loans. So if the loan goes away, they still got to get paid.
Okay. So with the Freddie Mac non-experienced investors, how does that work out as far as someone qualifying for the loan?
I'm still learning that right now. This kind of came out late last week, and I'm asking the question myself, right? Because I wouldn't mind GPing a deal down the road. What I would plan on right now is kind of going back to what if you were doing a conventional deal, and going out and finding that person who's signed on a deal and give them a small piece of the GP. If you're going to be the one that sources the deal, you're going to spend all that time we talked about going forward, raising the equity and doing all that. Right. Maybe give them a fee to sign on, but they do need to sign on, and there might be some control as well. I think they're going to have some control over the sponsorship group. So and
going that route, at what point in time do you get enough net worth where you can qualify for a loan?
At what point do you get enough net worth? Okay,
Yeah.
so the net worth and liquidity requirements, your net worth needs to be equal to the loan amount. And that can be combined, the sponsorship combined. So when you're pulling your key principles together, maybe look at that. That's something I would need to do. If I was going to take down a $7.5 million loan, I guess you could say I had a $7.5 million net worth. I don't, but I would go out and find someone who could provide maybe both the experience and the net worth and liquidity. That'd be ideal.
Okay.
Liquidity is going to be 10% of the loan amount for conventional. I think it's 9 months of debt service for Freddie small balance, and that can be collective as well, combined. So it just doesn't have to be everyone. It's not like joint and several where everyone has to have that. You can combine it as a group, as a sponsorship group, provide that liquidity.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. One other question that kind of came up today when I was talking with someone earlier, we were looking at a Freddie small balance deal, and they asked a good question. I hadn't thought about it. They said, well, Freddie's requiring all these reserves, 9 months reserves. Can that count towards my liquidity? If I'm going to put my liquidity with them and they hold my money, will that count towards the liquidity minimum? Unfortunately, the answer is no. That was a quick answer I got back from Freddie on that. So I think I really think that the reserves are going to be a short-term issue. Right now, Fannie and Freddie are doing the volume they're doing despite the reserves. So there's not a whole lot to cause them to kind of ease up on them, although they have eased up since March on them a little bit. I think they're going to be around, but really until we see the emergency declarations removed and the sky is not falling, that's when we're going to start seeing them, Fannie and Freddie, get competitive with each other and start reducing those requirements.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Old Capital handles debt and equity?
We do. I'd say the preponderance of what we focus on is the debt side. Right now, I've got a couple groups that I'm starting to look for equity for them. I know we have someone in Texas that's placed some equity before, so it's not something we've generally focused on, but we definitely have the Rolodex, and we're getting more requests for equity. So I'm going to try to make that a little bit more of a focus for me.
Okay. Do you know some of the terms on the equity?
I don't know specifics. I mean, you have different types, right? If you're doing LP versus preferred, different structures and whatnot. That's what I'm trying to do right now, is get a feel for who's doing what and what type of experience level do they want, what markets do they play in. So, yeah.
Okay.
So,
On the debt side, is there a minimum amount that y'all willing to do?
So if you're looking at agency debt, the very minimum for Fannie is $750,000. What I would tell you on that, though, is sometimes it's, from what I hear, I haven't run into it yet, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to get the attention of lenders for something under $1 million. So $1 million is the minimum, I'd say. At 1.2 million for Freddie, and above is, a desk lender can go ahead and just approve the, going below that, it causes a little bit more hurdles, but it certainly can be approved.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I know they've raised that not too long ago, because before it used to be, I remember back when it was 650,000.
Yeah.
So I think over the years they've increased that tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you one more question?
Of course. Keep going.
Do you also add a mezz piece on top of that?
Can you add a mezz?
Yes.
On agency, no. You can for Fannie. You can do supplemental loans, which you can't do with Freddie. And there's a number, I want to say 2 supplementals, maybe up to 2 supplementals on a particular deal.
Okay.
I can't remember what it exactly is, but those are always coterminous, so they're going to mature with the primary, the first mortgage. But mezz, if you're getting a mezz, you're looking at bank, and I'm not sure if Bridge would allow it, but yeah.
There's a deal now. I've been talking with a broker about. He's trying to get us to assume the loan at a 5.2 interest rate.
Okay. Wow. I would do that.
I'm like,
I saw the same thing here. There was a couple deals like 5.5, and I was like, ugh. And it's like, they say, well, it's kind of baked into the high cap rate that you're buying in at, but I still just can't wrap my head around it, So
if I'm going to pay that rate, you got to come down a little bit on that price point.
Yeah,
you have to offset that somehow.
Totally.
Yeah.
Brandon, what about you? Are you multifamily guy, or what are you doing?
Yeah, as well. So full time, I'm an engineer. So I work for the Coca-Cola company in research and development for equipment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I actually have been interested in real estate for a while, and I actually just closed on my first property. So I wanted to do a house hack. So I got a property in Decatur. And I was lucky because I know it's tough to get a small multifamily in the metro area, especially inside the perimeter. But was able to find a 4-bedroom house with a 2-bedroom guest house. It's currently under renovation. And so that's my experience with real estate on the first deal, and already looking, towards the future, trying to scale up and do larger scale.
That's fantastic. So you survived the Coca-Cola cuts, or?
Who knows? They announced those like a couple of weeks ago. I'm pretty confident my position is safe. Just we have a very small team and engineering. We keep technical teams very, very lean as is.
Yeah.
And aside from that, I have a pretty good connection just based off of the Georgia Tech alumni, and then I'm also in a frat that's pretty prominent in Atlanta. And so I'll be looking around as Coke looks to make their cuts. I like to have backup plans just in case.
I'll tell you this: I'm kind of looking at myself, saying, why do I do this now? I left the asset management field for this exciting role for me, but it's eat what you kill. So there's no income until I start doing deals, and it's like a totally new market for old capital, and so it's scary, right? So I'm looking at savings, but I looked at that article with Coca-Cola's package they're offering. It's like a year's worth of salary, a year's worth of healthcare. I'm like, holy cow! I should have been working for Coca-Cola. It's a nice deal. Well, good. That's cool to hear. You're taking those steps. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, get you some deals, Clay.
I know. Right? It's been encouraging. It really has. There's been a lot of people that know the Old Capital name and have reached out and been getting quotes on a lot of deals from bridge to agency. So hopefully something will land one of these days. It's a volume business though,
Right. It will.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I was going to say, I love that you're here, Clay, that you're here in Georgia. Because, I mean, you know Georgia left and right. The last video I saw from you, I mean, you knew every single corner of Georgia. So you're going to do great. It's just a matter of that, like what Winston and I are doing too, is once we get that first deal down, from there on is the law of the first deal, right? Exactly right. So I've the past 5 years have managed at least 22 different deals in Atlanta across the metro, from McDonough up to Sandy Springs, not any further north than that, but kind of just about all the areas. So I feel like I know the area well, and hope to leverage that, for people, especially coming from the outside. There's been a lot of investor interest from other parts of the country, flying in even during COVID to look at deals that are on the market. So we'll see. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that too. Most of the deals that we're getting are coming usually from Atlanta or Decatur. So it's a prominent market for sure, and people from everywhere, Texas, California, you name it, they're coming to take a better look at Atlanta.
Yeah, totally. It speaks well of the city. So I think it's a great long-term bet. I think that's what people are looking at. I love Charlotte. I would move there in a heartbeat. It's a really cool city, but it's very heavy on finance, right? And they're not having any lack of bidders on multifamily deals there either. But Atlanta has that geographic, not geographic, but that economic diverse base of Coca-Cola and Home Depot and these big companies, Delta, that you're not too married to one sector. Plus all these universities that, like Georgia Tech has done wonders for Midtown with all the tech hiring in that area. It's unbelievable. And they always come back to the Georgia Tech incubation, basically. I mean, it's huge. So.
Okay.
And Brandon, would you consider investing in multifamily now? Are you considering that, or you want to stay single family?
Oh no, definitely. Actually, the one property I have is, well, I treat it as a multifamily because that was the point. I wanted to be able to use that as kind of a bridge or a stepping stone up until larger projects. So I wanted to make sure that I got all the experiences that I would need, or at least a good amount of it. So I went ahead and did something I could add value to be able to force appreciation, got multiple units, and we're actually doing a conversion in the back unit. And then of course I self-manage and all that. So that's definitely the goal, is to be able to go up to, it'll be a house hack, so I'll be living there, so it won't be as bad. No. But definitely wanted to be able to move into a larger scale.
Right. And that's what we see a lot too, especially being part of the group, where people start off in single family, myself included. When I first started back in 1999, I was doing single family homes. And even when we were investing, we were doing flips and everything else. I don't really, personally, of my own experience, I don't really consider that, right? But I do consider everything that I did in multifamily. And then the main thing that I did, with the joint ventures, back in, I want to say 2003 or so, we were buying joint ventures. We were buying small multifamily, 5-6 units. We had a couple investors that wanted to go in on deals with us, and that was a great experience. Not as expensive as syndication per se, as far as the PPMs and everything else, but it's also a good progression, if you will, the next step over, to try to gain more experience also. So in that aspect, when you do a joint venture, now you're dealing with other companies and the company formations, to be able to take down the deals. So that's another, one more step closer to syndicating, if you will.
Totally.
That's cool. Yep. And I was going to say, next month's meeting is actually going to be another great one too. I'm bringing another gentleman by the name of Clay. His name is Clay Malcolm. And Clay's going to be talking about 401ks and how to use 401ks and self-directed IRAs to invest in deals. So that's something else I'm very much looking forward to. And he's, I believe, with Advanta IRA. And I'm sure, Clay, you've known of them forever too. Ever since I've been in Georgia, I've been hearing about Advanta, and they're really the main source for 401ks here in Georgia. So I'm
great.
Really excited for that one as well.
You can get them sooner because I'm not so sure how long this stock market is going to hold up.
I know, it's getting crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a Tesla. Did you see Tesla today?
No, what happened with Tesla?
Dropped.
Yeah, 21% one day.
Oh, but they drop and come back, right?
I don't know. I can't make sense of it. I just feel like I put a call into my Vanguard person. I have some IRA money from rollovers from prior employers, and said I don't know what to think anymore. I'm looking at Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio. I'm seeing what they're doing, and they're going out there buying gold and investing in China, and I'm like, should I be doing that?
Yeah, one thing I could tell you is that I think the dollar is hurting bad right now, for sure. And I think, because it's kind of weird that you mentioned Warren wanting to buy gold, because I specifically remember hearing him saying that, what are you going to do with gold? All you can do is look at it. You know? That's what he would say. He would just jokingly say, all you can do is actually look at it. What am I going to do with it? He said, I prefer to invest in businesses, right?
Yeah, cash flow.
But if he's talking about gold, then something's happening with the dollar and we better be privy to it for sure.
He didn't just buy gold. He bought a whole mining company. So,
Wow.
but it's not. It's in relation to Berkshire Hathaway, it's a very small percentage. But just you're right to that point. He has always poo-pooed gold, and now all of a sudden he's into it. And so yeah, the amount of dollars that are being printed. I've got to think you want to be in something that's inflation hedged, like real estate. It's going to be producing that cash flow. So that's why I brought that up with the 401k. I'm looking at my IRAs right now. I'm like, I'm so invested in the markets right now, like stock markets, and not in precious metals or anything like that. I'm a little bit concerned about it. So
Yeah, I think you want to definitely not put your eggs all in one basket. So a little bit of everywhere. But I don't really invest in stocks. I stopped investing in stocks way back. I didn't like the fact that I didn't have enough control over it. That was my experience. So.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank y'all.
This was great.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us today for sure. And Clay, this was awesome. Let's definitely keep in touch as far as our team is concerned.
Yeah.
We're always looking for other GPs, obviously other LPs as well. But yeah, I think we have a lot of synergies together. So I'd like to continue and keep in touch for sure.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, guys. I'll shoot you guys an email. I'll just go ahead and send, if you care to see it, I'll send that business plan out. And we'll stay in touch.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you for joining us today. You have a great time.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Take care. Bye. Well, that was our very first, it's kind of getting dark in here. It was our very first virtual meetup for Multifamily Investor Nation here in Georgia. If you can see behind me over here, it says Meetup Network Learn. Build your future in multifamily real estate investing with Carlos D. Reinoso, co-organizer of Multifamily Investor Nation here in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to having you guys back. Our next meetup is going to be with Clay Malcolm of Advanta IRA, and he's going to be giving us some tips on how to use your 401ks, possibly your self-directed IRAs, to invest in multifamily. So we hope you'll join us for that one. Thank you so much for spending some of your Tuesday here with us. And from now on, the meetings will be the first Monday of every month. First Monday of every month from 6 p.m. until the meeting ends. Thank you guys once again for your time. We'll see you next time on Multifamily Monday Meetups. Have a great one.